I have social anxiety. This is probably the result of trauma in the lives of my teenage parents, which led to inconsistency and neglect in my youth. In my childhood years, I made some decisions about life, which included that love, and any chance I had of controlling anything, was based on my ability to perform, and preferably be perfect. Socialization in the many public schools I attended did little to disabuse me of this idea. Kids are so cruel. But teachers and administrators, they really appreciate performance and perfection-seeking tendencies. They offered me endless escapes from those mean kids. And in the schools, I developed more trust in institutions than I had in individuals. So organizations, by their very nature, provide me a degree of social comfort. They have rules, so I have some idea of how to behave. The ones I gravitate to tend to provide me with personal benefits, as well as the opportunity to have a positive influence on others, individuals and groups. And they provide me with the opportunity to fit in, because I'm helpful, which is my standard operating procedure. Nearly all of the people I call friends started as comrades, working toward a common goal. Unitarian Universalism is perfect for someone like me. Not only are there rules, individuals are invited to participate in creating those rules. Advances in personal and spiritual growth are encouraged. Failures are widely understood and accepted. Both awareness and action on social justice issues are readily available in the Unitarian Universalist world. Plus, there are endless opportunities to provide help of every imaginable kind. You can clean, organize, repair, or maintain things in this incredible, fascinating, gorgeous building. You can develop or manage programs for recreation, fundraising, education, community building. You can support people in this congregation, people in the community, and people in the world. You can entertain, expand, and experience new thoughts, new ideas, and new actions. I mean it. There's a lot of ways to be part of our UU community. I'm working on new ways to overcome my social anxiety. Vulnerability is part of that, and being part of the Worship Associates is going to be a big movement in that direction. I'm pretty sure that everyone can find a place here.
Our reading today is called Self-Care by James Cruz. Some days it feels like a foreign language I'm asked to practice, with new words for happiness, work, and love. I'm still learning how to say a cup of tea for no reason, what to call the extra honey I drizzle in, how to label the relentless urge to do more and more as poison, and how to translate the heart's pounding message when it comes, enough, enough. This morning, I searched for words to capture the glimmering sun as it lifts above the mountains, clouds already closing in as fat droplets of rain darken the deck. I'm learning to call this stillness self-care, too. Just standing here, watching goldfinches scatter up from around the feeder like pieces of bright yellow stained glass, reassembling in the sheltering arms of a maple. Welcome. Welcome to each and every one of you, whether it's your first visit or you have been coming here since childhood or somewhere in between. No matter who you are, wherever or whatever you come from, you are welcome here. Unitarian Universalism is a really long name. And honestly, it is not the easiest concept to explain because every person gets to define their spirituality for themselves. But in the words of my friend Sunshine Glynn, Unitarian Universalism doesn't mean believing in anything you want or believing in nothing. It's about believing what your soul must and living your life accordingly. The two historic strands of Unitarian Universalism were both Christian heresies. You know what heresies means? Heresies is something that is against the accepted conventional wisdom. And so witches were burned as heretics because they didn't follow the traditional religious norms of the day. Unitarianism has been around since the time of Jesus. Unitarians said that Jesus didn't claim to be divine. And there's some biblical evidence for that if you actually read the Gospels carefully. Unitarians believed that Jesus was a powerful prophet, that he was one of the best examples of siding with the oppressed, of striving for justice and mercy and love. They believed that Jesus' life was more important than his death or even his resurrection. Universalism has also been around for a really long time, though this branch of Universalism started in Great Britain and the United States as a response to the Puritans and Calvinists who preached that God was only going to save a few human beings, hand-picked. No one would know who they were, and that he hated sinners so much that he would spend eternity punishing the rest of us. From there, modern Christianity decided that everyone who believed in Jesus would be saved, not just the 440 or something like that, but that meant that if you followed a different religion, or if you hadn't heard the right story, you too were going to hell. Spoiler alert, we really don't believe in hell. The idea of universalism means that no one is going to hell, that no one is permanently cut off from the love of God. But this doesn't mean that we can do anything we want. One of my favorite anecdotes about universalism is a story of two circuit riding preachers, one a Universalist and one a Methodist. And they were both riding on horseback between two small towns in Ohio, which was what circuit riding preachers did, on their way to their next preaching gig. And the Methodist turns to the Universalist and said, "So let me get this straight. You mean to tell me that I could shoot you off your horse right now and leave you dead by the side of the road and nothing would happen because there is no hell?" "Yes," said the other preacher. "But if you were a Universalist, the idea would never have crossed your mind." While Unitarianism and Universalism are both come out of the Christian tradition, it is in some ways the heretical or going against doctrine part that plays the most into modern day Unitarian Universalism. I mentioned permanently cut off from God's love, and I could see some of your faces going, "I didn't think this was about God," and it doesn't have to be. The one thing that is really true about Unitarian Universalism is that the God question is up for each person to decide for themselves. Some of us believe in something we call God. Some of us don't at all. All of that is really fine. What matters here is how we act, how we are to each other, how we keep that covenant of relationship. Because for centuries, Unitarian Universalists have been willing to question orthodoxy and have looked to new revelations as important sources of truth. The third really important strand of our liberal religious faith is religious humanism. Humanism is a belief system that believes in rational, scientific thought and human flourishing. It believes that humans are responsible for what happens in the here and now, that there is no God that will do that for us, and so we are responsible. Humanism uses reason and science as the way of understanding the world. If scientists concur that evolution is true, then that's what humanists believe. If 10 or 20 or 100 or 500 years from now, science believes something else, then humanist belief will evolve as well. Humanists use scientific inquiry and reason and experience and human understanding as the sources of truth. But beyond their dependence on reason and science, humanism is founded on an ethic of compassion, believing that it is our responsibility to make the world a better place for all of its inhabitants, and that we have evolved as part of the earth, not placed here with dominion over it. But we are a part of the global ecosystem, and we have to nurture and protect it. That's our responsibility. Most modern-day Unitarian Universalists believe in the tenets of humanism, the idea that our personal lived experience matters and is a basis for our beliefs, and that science is real. Some of us also believe in God to one extent or another. Very few of us believe in the God of evangelical Christianity, the old white guy who sits in the clouds, sees into each of our hearts, and decides who lives, who dies, and who wins the football game. One of my lines is, my God doesn't do weather. Because if God is really omnipotent and all-powerful, she and I need to have a super serious discussion about the Holocaust. But I will say that as a minister, I really kind of hate it when people shorthand Unitarian Universalism as all the religions put together, or you don't have to believe anything. Because to me, what you don't believe isn't the interesting part of the question. I think the much more interesting question is, what do you believe? And this congregation will let you work that out on your own in community. Personally, I, Marcia, believe in a creative force in the universe, which I am willing to call God, that is present in the natural world and in relationships between people. I believe, in the words of the great theologian, Mr. Fred Rogers, that God is found in the helpers. And I believe in humanist fashion that we are responsible for the kindness, justice, and compassion that we wish to see in the world. I think God is found in trees and rocks and water and in community coming together. God in acts of kindness and chicken noodle soup. But I like to call it God because I like to believe that there is something larger than I am out there. And for me, calling it God gives me a sense of that awe and wonder that drives the religious impulse and helps me be kind, be grateful, and get out of my own damn way sometimes. But most statements have a grain of truth in them, and the grain of truth is, you don't have to believe in anything, is that we are a non-creedal religion. What that means is that you can be a full part of this congregation and this faith without ascribing to any kind of particular set of beliefs. I can believe in somebody I call God or something I call God, but you don't have to. And probably most of us don't. We don't have to share the same beliefs about God or not God or what happens after we die. But we do have a set of principles that guide us and how we choose to be together. This version of our principles was written in the 1980s and is much beloved. We, the member congregations of the Unitarian Universalist Association, like Shelley was talking about, the 1,000 or so congregations that covenant to form the Unitarian Universalist Association, covenant to affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of every person, justice, equity, and compassion in human relations, acceptance of one another and encouragement to spiritual growth in our congregations, a free and responsible search for truth and meaning, the right of conscience and the use of the democratic process within our congregations and in society at large, the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all, respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part, and the eighth principle, journeying towards spiritual wholeness by working to build a diverse, multicultural, beloved community by our actions that accountably dismantle racism and other oppressions in ourselves and in our institutions. And we have some common values, which include justice, equity, or fairness, everyone getting what they need, transformation, or the idea that the world isn't stuck, pluralism, or the idea that we get to believe different things, interdependence, the idea that we need each other, and generosity. And most of all, we believe that everything we do is centered in love. That love for each other and for the world is the defining force, not romantic love, but that wanting the best for everyone kind of love. But all of these lovely words about where we come from doesn't answer the question that I am sure some of you have today, which is, why should I give up my Sunday mornings to come to church? Because honestly, for us, we are not giving up Sunday mornings. We are finding community that matters. I believe we gather together with folks who share common values to work on becoming better people. And by better people, I mean more kind, more just, and more compassionate. We gather together because we want to teach our kids values, and that is hard to do alone. We want to give our kids something to hang on to in a world where sometimes it seems like the only choice is between consumer culture that teaches us we are what we own and Christian culture that has been so twisted that somehow people believe that Jesus cared more about sex and abortion than about feeding hungry people. And I got to tell you, if that's what you think, you have not read the book. We are a community that puts our values to work in the world. We feed the hungry. We support organizations in our community like the Clackamas Women's Services, the Hope Food Pantry, and the Living Room, which we host, which provides safe space for LGBTQ teenagers and young adults in our community to gather. We show up at events like Oregon City Pride yesterday, where we passed out flyers and little heart stones and spoke with people, and where I wore a t-shirt that said, "Brilliant queer minister who is not a dude." We believe that Black lives matter, that LGBTQ people are precious and loved, that science is real and climate change is real, and that we can't continue to pollute the earth without consequences, that our children's right to attend school without getting shot is more important than a person's right to amass assault rifles. And for some people, this sounds like politics, and they aren't completely wrong. But really, it's about justice in our community and our nation and our world. Because here, you are seen, and you are valued, and you are a beloved child of the universe. Here, we build a community that invites connection, inspires spiritual growth, and ignites action for justice in the wider world. And we work to become better people. Here, we teach our kids those values, and that by being kinder and more just and more compassionate means drawing a wider circle, not a narrower one. I'm going to talk about kids for a minute, because a woman in our congregation came up to me recently and said how absolutely thrilled she was that her kid has found friends here. Now, I am totally sure that we have well-adjusted, popular kids in our RE classes. But we also have kids who are neurodiverse, or trans, or non-binary, or gender fluid, or who, for whatever reason, because who doesn't struggle as a kid today, maybe just doesn't fit in with the mainstream. And it's not always perfect, but part of what we teach here is that it is okay to be different, and it's important to be kind. And that means that kids here can make friends, and that is a pretty amazing thing. And yes, I have permission to tell that story. According to Nicholas Kristof, writing in the New York Times this week, the world, but particularly the United States, is experiencing a loneliness epidemic, and this is literally killing us. Studies show that loneliness increases the risk of death more than any other lifestyle factor except heavy smoking. Americans are routinely more isolated than we ever have been. Kristof writes, "One of the paradoxes of humanity is that while we, along with other primates, evolved to be social creatures, wealth drives us into solitude. When we have the resources, we stop sleeping 8 to a hut and build a big house with high walls, and each family member has a private bedroom and bathroom, and then to afford the mortgage, we work so hard that we never manage to have meals together." Kristof notes that many other countries, Great Britain, Sweden, Japan, Australia, have appointed ministers of loneliness to encourage pro-social in-person behavior. Social media was thought to do that when it first came out. And for some people, it really does. It is so helpful if you are a person that, there may be 3 of you in your big city and you can connect with other people who have the same condition or interests than you do. That can be a powerful thing. But for a lot of us, it actually seems to make us lonelier because we're comparing ourselves to everyone else's best day. But by showing up on Sunday morning or Wednesday night for choir or Tuesday for the men's group helps drastically, because you are doing something with a group of people. You don't have to believe anything more than wanting to be more kind, more just, and more compassionate. And so if this is the type of community that you're looking for, one where your questions are welcomed and you don't need to check your brain at the door, and your hands are invited to bend the arc of the world towards justice, then we invite you to join us in the work of justice and compassion and love. You, all of you, is welcome here. Blessed be, and amen.